Hi, everyone. Before we jump into today's episode, we just wanted to say a very heartfelt thank you for the overwhelming amount of support and positive feedback we've received. From our podcast guests to those of you tuning in and listening or watching, or anyone cheering us on as we compete on MasterChef, we are surrounded by an amazing community of people that I fully believe are here with us for a reason. So, truly, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, and leave a review for Disco wherever it is that you listen. This is massively helpful for us to show up in searches and to let people know that we're worthwhile. In return, our promise to you is to bring you the best podcast we possibly can while staying authentic to ourselves and what we set out to do. And that's to create a space for anyone to come explore the unknowns and unseens of spirituality and not be made to feel like an idiot. Everyone's welcome here. So let's get to it, shall we? In this episode of Disco, we dive deep into the magic of synchronicities and mystical coincidences with not one, but two special guests, synchro experiencer Nazy and our good friend Kathryn Brewer. Nazy shares how a string of impossible coincidences brought her to her fiancé, while Kathryn brings a grounded spiritual lens to understanding these signs and what they might mean. From uncanny encounters that lead to life-changing relationships to the subtle nudges of spirit that show up in recovery and personal growth, we unpack why these moments matter. Whether you've ever seen repeating numbers, bumped into the right person at the right time, or if something in your life felt fated to happen, this conversation will most likely have you appreciating the beauty and magic in the everyday coincidences of life, if you choose.
Disco, the podcast.
Disco, the podcast.
Hello, everybody. We are here today to talk about synchronicities, mystical coincidences. And it's kind of a special episode because we've got two of you here today. We are talking today to Nazy, who has experienced some significant synchronicities in her life, and we're going to dig all into that, into her story. But we also have Kathryn Brewer with us as well, our golden age medium, who we love so much. And she is gracing us with her presence today to just help us pick apart what synchronicities are. And I guess before we get into the story, Kathryn, curious now, we know that you don't claim to be any synchronicity expert. I don't know if there are any synchronicity experts out there. I'm sure there are. But you're close. You have more experience than any of us in terms of what synchronicities are, what they mean, how we might choose to look at them. But set the stage for us and listeners, I guess, from your knowledge base, what are synchronicities and what do they mean?
Thanks. Yeah, definitely not an expert, but I do think about synchronicities a lot because I feel like they're information for us. So
Yep.
I'd say there's three types of synchronicities that I can think of right off the bat. There's all the little synchronicities of like seeing patterns of numbers, having your eye notice something and it's exactly what you wanted to look at. You're thinking about someone and then you see their name on a poster or something like that. And you're like, wow. Another synchronicity that people experience is like they think of someone and then they drive by. They're talking about someone and then they call, that kind of situation. And then I think there's also synchronicities where you're moving into a new direction in your life and opportunities start showing up. You're like, I think I'd like to have a house in this neighborhood. And you look and you look, and then you look again the next day, and suddenly someone just put a house on for sale and you didn't realize, like, was that even there yesterday, or parking spots? So I think of synchronicities two ways. The very common, simple synchronicities of patterns of numbers, things like that, I think of like bids for connection. So I don't know if anyone's heard of relationship theory, bids for connection. And I don't know if we talked about this at camp, but in relationship theories, there's a theory that relationships are destined to do better, or good prediction of the health of a relationship is how each partner responds to bids for connection. So a bid for connection is like, oh, hey, honey, look at that beautiful bird in that tree. And if your partner goes, oh, the bird, oh, yeah, I see it, and looks and tries to see it, that is a sign that like you're connected, and it's a good sign of health in the relationship. If they like look at their phone and like, don't look, you might be in trouble. um, and I feel like those patterns of 1111, 444, things like that, noticing a cardinal, noticing something that like that, they're bids for connection from the spirit world. And the more we're open to noticing them, the more our relationship with the spirit world grows.
Have you experienced this in your own life? Do you have a personal synchronicity history?
Yeah, so I see numbers all the time. And sometimes when I start to see like 110, I'm like, oh, they're really getting my attention. And I'm responsive. I'm so responsive that they don't have to nudge me 4 times for me to see it at 111. So they start nudging me early, but I'm so responsive, I'll see it at 110. So then I'm like, yeah, it still counts.
I love that. Noted.
So for me, when my intuition or when my guides or when spirit is talking to me, it feels like they're just getting my attention. They're distracting me. And I'll notice like the time will be 11:11 or 2:22. And then I'll think to myself, I haven't looked at the clock in a while. Why did I look just then? And that's just the health of the relationship to me. I don't feel like I need to go look up an angel number and figure out what they're telling me and like get some deep lesson. To me, it's like a wink. It's like a hello. You're responding. You said, look at the bird. I looked at the bird. You said, look at the clock. I looked at the clock. And then it's like, oh, hi, you're still there. It just feels like that. Um, then I think there are other synchronicities like opportunities showing up. You start stepping into alignment with your path, and then the money starts showing up. The opportunities start showing up. The right people at the right time start showing up. I feel like that's being in alignment with your path. And the more on alignment with your path you are, the more it's almost like dimensions or timelines compressing and syncing up. And so the people who are your soul family start showing up. Opportunities show up. You're moving into that ease and flow. And those are all synchronicities. So I think, those are kind of bigger, more when you're in alignment. The other ones are great and still important, but they're the ones that we start noticing first, are like times on the clock or cars passing by. You always see the same car, or sometimes people see messages on license plates, that kind of thing. That's like just the warming you up, building your relationship. And then the more you're trusting in your path and moving in your path, you start getting the big ones, like the perfect person to talk to, the perfect job showing up, the perfect opportunity.
Yep, yep. As you're talking through these different examples, I can, the ones that resonate with me are I'm constantly looking at license plates almost to the point where it's like, Michelle, take a break, drive. um, but Nazi, I guess I'm curious if those are resonating with you, and which in particular feel like they resonate most with you in your story.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've definitely, um, when I've experienced them, I've never been really looking. They're so
Yep.
obvious that they kind of like hit me in the face, and I'm like really taken by surprise. And I mean, I've experienced I don't experience the numbers that often, but the last one I experienced was recent. I was on my bachelorette and we were in Sedona and we were coming back from hiking. The, like, Chapel Rock and when we were on the shuttle back, we looked at the bus and it was, like, 5:25 to 25, so May 25th at at 5:25. So it was just 5252525. And but yeah, I think in terms of the like coincidences of like for me it's been like numbers, it's also been names of people, it's been like the coincidences of like dates and locations, things like that. And yeah, they've always like really hit me in the face and kind of been like almost shocking. So, yeah, I don't know, is now a good time to dive into them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's you told this story on Dak Shepard's podcast and tell it to us, but better.
Yeah.
No
So
pressure.
that's a lot of pressure. So I actually had to write these down because like I've had three major synchronicities in my life, and they are all kind of related to one another. The first one, I had to write them all down so I didn't forget to talk about them. But the first one was when I met my now fiance, Jonathan. I was uh, 25 and I was going to a friend's wedding in Frankfort, Michigan, which is far away. You have to like fly into Grand Rapids and drive 3 hours to get there. And so, um, on the way there in the plane, I had sort of a uncomfortable encounter with the person sitting next to me, and I found out that they were also staying in Frankfort, Michigan at the same resort that I was staying at coincidentally, but going to a funeral instead of a wedding. And so I was like, okay, whatever, let me just try to avoid this person. So that was already kind of nuts, but like kind of a bad coincidence. And
How
then
did you know that they were going where you were? Did you like see them as you were continuing?
we were chatting. He was sitting
Okay.
next to me and we were
Got it.
chatting, and like we were like, where are you going? Like it was from LaGuardia. We were both leaving New York and we were headed to Grand Rapids, and it was
Okay.
just this normal small talk plane conversation of like, where are you going? And we were both just like,
Sure.
oh, weird that we're gonna be in Frankfort, Michigan at the same hotel. But also I was very creeped out. I didn't like their energy. They were older. They were talking about like their sex life and how they recently got divorced, and it was kind of just it's just not an encounter I wanted as like a young 25-year-old girl, woman.
Yeah, and at the same hotel too. Not even
Yeah,
like the same city, the same hotel.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, right, because
yeah,
it's like, you have to travel 3 hours by car from Grand Rapids, so he shouldn't
yeah,
be going there, let
right.
alone to that town, but to the same hotel.
Right.
Exactly, exactly. So I guess this is synchronicity number one, but like the bigger synchronicity, that's like the good synchronicity comes later. But essentially, I go to the wedding, have a great time. I'm checking out of my hotel in the morning. I walk out, and then that creepy dude is standing outside my hotel room, and he's like drunk. He's smoking a cigarette, and he's trying to talk to me. He knew where I was sleeping the whole time because I had left my suitcase outside of my room. So I was very at that point I was very creeped out, and I was just hoping that he wasn't on my flight uh back to New York because I was leaving that day, and I assumed that they were leaving that day. Anyway, so I go to the Grand Rapids airport, and lo and behold, I see that creepy dude at the airport bar at my gate, and I'm like, crap, he's gonna be on my flight. So I'm in like this heightened state of like awareness and also just a little bit of panic and like just I don't know. I was 25, so I didn't have a lot of maturity about it either. I was very alarmed and didn't really know what to do. And so in the gate there was this other gentleman, who is now my fiance, but we were like exchanging glances, but I was on high alert and not really in the mood to flirt at that moment because I was very creeped out by what was happening.
Fair,
So
yeah.
he shot me a smile and I smiled back, but I was just like, ew, men are disgusting at that time. So then I go and board the plane and again, hoping that the creepy dude is not sitting next to me on the flight. And I know that if you book your flights at the same time, you tend to have like seats that are closer to each other. So I kind of put that pattern together and I was like, there's a chance he's going to be sitting next to me. Anyway, I go to board the flight. Jonathan, who we are not talking yet, but he's behind me. Um, and I get to my row 17, and he's behind me and he helps me with my suitcase and he says, "Oh, had you been sitting there, I wouldn't have changed seats to sit next to my buddy. I was supposed to be in 17A and I was 17B. So he was supposed to be sitting next to me and changed his seat to sit next to his friends. And he was like, have a great flight. So he was like interested in me and supposed to be sitting next to me, but changed his seat. And then the creepy dude is sitting kitty corner of me, still trying to talk to me. I'm still trying to ignore him. Everybody on this flight that's going to New York has a layover in Detroit. So we're going from Grand Rapids to Detroit, and then back and then to New York. And so by the time I get to Detroit, I go to the most crowded place, which is like the airport bar, and I slam like 3 IPAs in 45 minutes, and I just like just self-medicate. And again, like I said, 25 and a bad relationship with substances. And I go to board the flight going from Detroit to New York, and I see that the creepy dude is again a few people behind me, and then I see Jonathan is like, oh sorry, the creepy dude is a few people in front of me and Jonathan is a few people behind me. And so I had this idea popped into my head. I'm like, this guy like admitted he has a crush on me. Do I like tell him my situation and ask him to sit next to me to be my protector of some sort? Like, what do I like? And then so I was just running through this idea in my head, and I was like, no, that's crazy. Like, you don't. He's gonna think you're nuts. And I was weighing the pros and cons of that in my head, and I don't know what happened, but my like feet just went offline from my brain, and I found myself marching back towards him. And then he was really confused because he was like, who walks the opposite direction out of like the airplane tunnel unless something like serious is going on? And so I go up to him and I'm like, hey, can I ask you a really aggressive question? Can you sit next to me on this flight? And he was very curious and he's like, sure. And I was kind of telling him what was happening. So now the creepy guy's like out of the equation, but he contributed to us kind of coming together. And so we were talking on the flight, and he was like, oh, what were you doing in Grand Rapids? Because that was the gate in which we first saw each other. And I was like, oh, I was at a wedding in Frankfurt. And he was like, that's so odd. I was at a wedding in Frankfurt. And I was like, what are the odds? What is happening with Frankfurt? Why is everybody going here this weekend? And then I was like, yeah, my friends Sarah and Andrew got married. And then his face just goes white. And he's like, my friends are named Sarah and Andrew. And so we both had Sarah and Andrew weddings in Frankfurt, Michigan. Again, 3-hour drive from Grand Rapids, not an easy place to get to. And they were different weddings, but the bride and the groom.
I was going to say, are you sure that you guys were not at the same wedding?
1,000%. There's my friends from college, Sarah and Andrew, and then his friends from the city, Sarah and Andrew.
It's probably 30,000 Sarah and Andrews in Frankfurt.
That also is true. Yeah, they're very common names. So that was the first major one. And then
hold on.
Yeah.
But he lived in New York too, right? And he lived. Didn't you like he lived by you, and now you're getting engaged?
That was
like
tell
us the rest of the fucking story.
Sorry. Yeah, so that was the other crazy coincidence, was that I realized that when we were talking, one of his friends lived on my block, so we all shared an Uber home. And then I found out that his apartment was a few blocks away from my office, and then also that we went to the same workout studio. So like we had never encountered each other in any other way except at the Grand Rapids airport, both coming back from weddings in Frankfurt, Michigan. So that was just odd. But anyway, we basically started dating, and that was, I mean, over 8 years ago at this point, and now we're getting married next month. So I think in some way, like fate kind of brought us together. I don't know.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's like, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks so much.
That's so exciting.
Our first wedding on the podcast.
Yes. But it was like the universe was like pushing you, like, I mean, here you are living close to each other, going to the same gym, but not running into each other. And the universe is like shaking you guys at this point in time. Like, what the hell? Why isn't this happening? Okay, we just have to like shove Nazy into this really uncomfortable position so she feels like uncomfortable enough to charge forward to this stranger and ask for help. Like, I mean, yeah,
that's like getting
wild.
bashed over the head. And it's like, I question, obviously, like, yeah, Michelle just said it. If there is no creepy old guy trying to hit on you for 3 straight days, basically, does this happen? It
Maybe
might not happen.
he was an angel.
Yeah.
Some sort of demented angel. Yeah, sure.
I was just
What I heard you saying too was that your feet led you there. Like there was a sense of it almost being like compulsive, or I don't know if that's the right word, but like, just you abandoned thinking for just long enough to follow this urge and not overthink it and not over process it. You just went with that gut feeling and let that lead you. And
Yeah.
that to me, more than the guy, like I think the guy was just random, discomfort, but like this sense of listening or not listening to your head, but following that feeling after your fiance was showing up in multiple spaces, some that you noticed and some that you didn't. Like you didn't
Mhm.
notice him at the gym, but then you noticed him at the airport.
Yeah.
That's the really interesting part to me. Like, I
Yeah.
wonder if you didn't do that, would
Yeah.
you have started noticing him at the gym more? Would there have been more moments? Would he have felt compelled to like walk up to you, or would you have figured something else out? Like, because I think that sometimes when we ignore it, it starts putting more pressure on us. It starts
Mhm.
coming in more directions, and eventually we can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, and we've actually talked about that after the fact because, um, I don't think that we'd be, uh, I don't think if I think the thing that kept us both intrigued was the fact that we had this crazy meet cute story, and so it kind of made those initial, uh, dates and courting and all of that just a lot more, compelling, and then obviously the relationship naturally grew from there, but I think it was the, like, uncanniness of the story and the initial meeting that kind of, like, locked us in the beginning um, enough to see this through to where it is today.
Yeah.
do you have any sense of like what still might be flowing through you if we, assume that this was fated, that you were supposed to meet and marry Jonathan? Like, do you know why? Do you have any thoughts on that? Not to put you on the spot with a very,
Oh,
personal and
you
deep
mean
question, but
now?
I'm just, yeah, yeah. Like, what might still be acting through you? Like, what was the point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, uh, we I have a lot of freedom and space in this relationship more than I've ever felt in any other relationship. I met him when I was, again, 25, and I'm now 34, and in that time, I had so much space to grow and evolve as a human being and somebody that was giving me that space to grow and evolve as a human being, and we both changed so much throughout that time, and, there's some odd similarities too. I mean, his dad is an architect, my dad is an architect, he's an engineer, my family is works in sort of has, like, a history of being in architecture and engineering and, like, building and designing things, and so, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's just been probably the most nourishing part of my life and maybe the only thing that I've been sure of, and not even sure of, but just the only thing that, like, hasn't really brought me a lot of it's just the whole thing is just the whole relationship, I just feel like I've worn it like a loose garment, it's always been there throughout my life, and we've, like, grown together and have built something together, but we're very, like, individual, unique people, and we give each other the space to do and be those things, and so, I don't know, now it makes a lot of sense because I have always just been super independent, um, when I was younger, I was just very, not troubled, but I was just very out there and, like, would get into a lot of the shenanigans, and that's the other big part of the story where the other synchronicities come into play, but, I've found sobriety when I was with him, and our relationship only continued to flourish from there. I had a pretty bad substance abuse problem that came to light, like, in my relationship when I realized, like, "Oh, this is, like, impacting someone that's very close to me and that I care about very much." And so, there were a lot of there's a lot of reflection that I can do after the fact and now that make this make sense. Does that answer your
Yeah.
question?
Yes, it does. It does. And let's maybe get into the sobriety part of it, like the next part of the story. And like, I'm just, before we do though, I'm curious, were you at all spiritual at 25? Like, were you like raised in a certain way, or like, where did you become, how and why did you become into this woo stuff? Was it like a result of like how your life got shaped through this path of synchronicities that you've walked?
Yeah, I no, I don't think I ever I mean, my mom was always kind of playfully into things like Ouija boards and very like believed in like loved stuff about like ghosts and spirits and things like that, but my family was not religious. I didn't like grow up with any conception of like a higher power, and I think it was uh, in sobriety when I first started to like a kind of like forced into having a relationship with a higher power where um all of this stuff and like kind of the magic in the universe just really made itself apparent because you have to trust on a higher in a higher power that you're on the right path, and you have to turn your willingness over and all of that stuff. And so that's really honestly that's really been a channel for me being really interested in this stuff and, like, just paying more attention to it.
Hmm.
So at what point were you like, hmm, all of these things that happened are kind of oddly, coincidental? Like, what was it at that point in time where you like, oh my gosh, all of these things are so weird? Or was it not until later, after, you had gone through your healing process of coming into sobriety that you were reflecting on all of this? Like, wow, it's actually really amazing, the domino effect of some of the things that happened that have led me here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it was and I can get into the other 2
Yeah,
synchronicities.
please.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the second one was, when uh when I first decided after I hit my rock bottom and I was like, something needs to change, I was, just I had stopped drinking and using drugs and was trying to figure stuff out, but I was very crunchy and just irritable and upset and lost. And my friend suggested we go to this cafe in Greenpoint was doing numerology readings. And I was like, cool, that's like a sober thing to do. Why not? I have no idea what sober activities even exist. That sounds fun. Let's do it. So she did a numerology reading on me using my birthday and my first name, my last name, my location of birth, all that stuff. And then she did a second one on Jonathan and I, basically kind of floored by the connections that we have. I can't even remember exactly what she said, but I still have the diagram somewhere. But it was basically like the first affirmation from somebody other than myself that this relationship was supposed to happen. And I felt really comfortable around her, and I opened up to her about what was happening in my life and deciding that I needed to get sober and feeling lost and all that. And she um was in the program herself, and because of her, I went to my first AA meeting. She took me there, and I don't think I would have stayed had she not taken me there. And then the craziest thing that happened, which is why I reached out to Zach about the synchronicity in the first place, because I went to do my hair and makeup. This was let me just clarify, this was 6 years ago. And I still kept in contact. I didn't keep in contact with her. I mean, I texted her occasionally like after that, but she was just some sort of like fairy pixie woman that I felt very connected to and was just and had this very like calming and alluring energy, and obviously made a big impact in my life in ways she didn't even understand at the time. And so I was going to do my hair and makeup trial for my wedding, and as far as I knew, this woman just like lived in New York. I didn't know what her plan was after that. Like again, I didn't keep in touch with her. No idea like where she was. I just knew like at all. And so I go to do my hair and makeup trial at this place upstate in Beacon, and, this hair and makeup place was also, like, a last minute vendor that I booked. They, like, squeezed me in, and then I go there, and I s go to and it's a very small place, just, like, 2 chairs and this, like, tiny bridal boutique, and then I go there, and the woman doing makeup is the numerologist. And I just
What in the actual fuck?
and I like couldn't speak. I was stunned. I was like, what? Like, and it was like a totally full circle moment because I was like, and she wasn't my makeup artist, but she was for the wedding, but she was doing somebody else's makeup and happened to be there that day. I think it would have been too much if she was going to be my makeup artist for my wedding, but she was there, and I just started crying because I was
Yeah.
like, how is this possible? And also, like, you have no idea how much you changed my life. I don't know. I definitely wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And I don't even know if I would be alive if it wasn't for you, you know, taking that action and taking me to that meeting that day. And so it was just this crazy, and she's very into woo woo stuff. So for her, I think she was like, "Oh, this makes sense." But I was, but I was completely floored and just like overwhelmed by emotion because I had no idea she was even a makeup artist, and she's just a makeup artist in this little boutique in Beacon, and just happened to be there on the same day that I was getting my hair and makeup trial done. It was just really odd, and also um just very it made me really happy at the same time. It's like I've never felt like so scared and happy at the same time. I think that's how I would feel.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
So
goosebumps.
cool. So cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kathryn, you
Help us unpack this. Like,
Yeah.
but like it does really seem like these are, like you said, Kathryn, bids for connection. There is truly some kind of hand that's guiding your direction. And even if it's not to just say with this woman, this numerologist, to say,
and makeup artist.
and makeup artist / makeup artist,
And probably many other things we don't know about.
like validation, you're on the right path. Like, yeah, it's just mind blowing to me.
For me, with a lot of the synchronicities, they're exactly that. They're reassurance that you're on the right path. They make you feel really like validated, comforted, take away some of the anxiety. I know that there are some people who see synchronicities and they think it's a message to do something different or whatever. I think it's encouragement you're on the right path. And so with this, with your wedding and your fiance, and it's just all these synchronicities that you're on your right path. And also with the sobriety, and look at how far you'd come. Like seeing her again would have been a reminder of like this life that you've chosen and how you're walking in it. You're on the right path because these important people are showing up without actively calling them in. They're just showing up. You're having this moment. She's showing up. You're doing makeup for your wedding. It's just all very reassuring.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely like how I took it. Um and in those moments I just felt this sense of, even though I was alarmed at the craziness of it after I got past that, I just felt so at peace and present and plugged in. And I was listening to your previous podcast that you did with Zach and Michelle, and you were talking about how like these moments of awakening or a feeling of like positivity or neutrality, and like that's exactly how I experienced them. It was just this like sense of positivity and um not doubting that they happened, like just being like, okay,
Yeah.
that was crazy, but that makes sense, and just feeling really at peace with these occurrences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. This is a question that we had and still have, and I think just people have, is how do we look at some of these things and not just say, this is just a fun coincidence? I think there are a lot of people, and Zach was definitely one of them at one point of time. I used to like make fun of me anytime I would say like 11:11, and we actually got into a fight about it at one at one point in time. However,
That's the third time you said point in time on this podcast.
oh my gosh.
Sorry.
It's a synchronicity.
But now it is crazy. He points it out to me sometimes more than I point it out now, and I'm like, just come a long
Right.
way.
Well, no, because it's like what you said, Catherine. Like, I don't pay attention to the clock, but every damn day, something nudges me to like look up and like that's what time it is. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
And you're not looking for it when you just feel that nudge and you're like something in your mind is like, I'm curious what time it is, and then you see that it's a pattern number. You're like, was that me really needing to know the time, or was I being nudged to see the time? Because I could have seen the time any of the other 59 minutes out of the hour
Yeah.
when it wasn't lining up and been curious, and it would have been just as helpful to know the time then. Why did I look just then?
Mhm.
Right. And I think that because anybody could just like, coincidence that away. Oh, it's just a
Mhm.
coincidence. This is just a coincidence. Oh, it's just a coincidence. Whatever. Oh, that's silly to like make anything feel more mystical than it just being a number on a clock or an experience of randomly seeing somebody. But I think when you make the choice and decide that no, this was a synchronicity. This was a nudge or a bid for connection from source, from spirit, from whatever you want to call it. I think that what you might be surprised to find is that you will see maybe more of those things showing
Yeah.
up. But, there's always going to be the naysayers.
I think that's exactly how it is, though, that the more you notice and the more you're receptive and the more you just like smile at them, right? Like the more you let it just be a positive feeling,
Yeah.
the more they start showing up.
Yeah.
Do you know? I mean, not that you haven't had your what sounds like Nazi a fair share of like existential crisis moments, like obviously rock bottom, getting sober, changing your life completely as a result of that. Any other ones in the offing? Like anything else going on like that? Because like why I'm asking is because like this story is really, to Michelle's point, really clear of like you're being pushed, whether you like it or not, towards something. And like I'm wondering how much you think about what that is. I asked that same question with like you and Jonathan earlier, but now to hear this like sobriety story and the way Kathryn was talking about it, and that's the theme of this discussion so far is like synchronicities start happening when we move closer to the alignment that we're supposed to be in, the life that we're supposed to be living, what we're ultimately supposed to be doing here. That's when they like start to show up and there's a velocity to like a trajectory at that point, like an escape velocity towards something. And often we don't know what it is, but we might have some idea. I also asked you this question because I know we are in a community of brand strategists together. And like,
Mhm.
I'm guessing and you just recently went freelance. I'm guessing brand strategy is maybe not what you ultimately like, there might be other things in there. So, you can take that question any way you want, but like, that's what I've been thinking about listening to this story.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of being pushed in a specific direction, I think besides rock bottom, I probably hit a second rock bottom in 2020, um, where I had just moved out. It was the pandemic, obviously, and I had just moved into my own like studio apartment. I had about like a year and a half of sobriety, and then all of a sudden, I realized how bad my anxiety and intrusive thoughts were. I developed pretty debilitating OCD to the point where it like put me in the psych ER. And a lot of my OCD, among other things, one of the big things was what they call like ROCD or relationship OCD. It's like when there's intrusive thoughts where you're like doubting the relationship and you can't really like understand where they're coming from. And I think like at that point, some of it was normal in the sense that, in any long-term relationship, I'm sure you question at some point, like, is this like for sure the right person for me? Just because of the abundance of people out there and just how much you're growing and evolving. I mean,
I
it is.
just questioned it like 5 minutes ago.
There you go.
Hey.
Yeah, normalize questioning whether or not you're with the right partner. No, but but to that point, like it got so bad to the point where I was searching for a definitive answer, like it was like life or death. And I had these like rituals around it. I would go back in like past events and try to like analyze a situation to like validate or invalidate a fear around my relationship that I had at that time. And I was just a complete mess, and it was just something, obviously this relationship was something that was so important to me, and I was like really hurt that I was being overwhelmed by all these feelings and like really confused. Um, so I think these and then after that I mean, obviously it was a long path to healing after that. I got an official like OCD diagnosis. I had to go on medication. I had to do like really intense exposure therapy around it and like just talk therapy. And it took probably about like another 3 years for me to be kind of in remission, and like around that time of remission is when like we got, engaged and like started moving in the right direction. So I think these synchronicities like coming after the fact are again other signs that like, you were in that headspace before, but like you made the right decision. And so and now I can look at them not as like not in like an unhealthy way of seeking a definitive answer and like here's the sign and now I must go with it, but more like after I came to that decision myself, I'm getting like a gentle nudge from whatever higher power is at play that this was the right choice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I personally think too, like I was listening to Zach say, like, what do you think it means? What do you think it's nudging you to? And my personal opinion is that's when we start to block ourselves. Because that's our mind going, what does it mean? What do I do next? We start thinking about it too much and we move out of that being receptive to the nudges to trying to find things everywhere and find more. And then we're the architects of every moment of our life instead of allowing the alignment to bring it to us. And so, and that also gets us into, well, what if I missed a nudge? And is that really the nudge? And we start second guessing and doubting and questioning ourselves. And then we're bringing ourselves down into that vibration of doubt
Mhm.
where everything's harder and we're going out of alignment. So the best thing to do is when we're seeing those synchronicities to go, if it's meant for me, it's going to show up. I don't even have to know what's next. I just know that what's meant for me is going to show up at the right time and I'm going to be ready for it when it does.
Yeah. I think that's just good takeaway for anybody listening too is, okay, so what am I supposed to do with these synchronicities? Okay, so I see 11 o'clock. What am I supposed to do with this now? What is the answer to that question in your opinion, Kathryn?
In mine, it's just imagine that the universe and synchronicities and spirits are just saying, I love you.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting too, and I said in the beginning of this conversation, is that they all kind of just like hit me in the face, and I never really look for them. And I think the third synchronicity that happened was also another, not that I was looking for validation or like seeing it like when I was in sobriety, and this happens to like most people. It's like you have like a couple years and you're just like, oh, I think I'm fine, like I could like dabble back into it when it's normal. And obviously after getting through that and really sitting into this is like, oh, this is like my life now, and like this is where I need to be. After sitting in that, I realized after the fact that my very first sponsor in AA um, had the same birthday as my dad, who passed when I was 19, and her wife had the same birthday as my mom. And these two people were like very, very important people in my life. Obviously, my sponsor is the one that led me through the steps. And then her wife was also, Reiki healer, like very just like calming, like motherly, maternal presence in my life in New York where my mom wasn't here physically. So like they were always like my spirit parents. And I realized first that her wife had the same birthday as my mom, and I was like, "That's crazy." And then it wasn't until like a couple years ago that I was like, and I knew my sponsor's birthday was always in April, but I didn't know it was the exact same day. And then I realized it was the exact same day. I was like, "How is it that both of you have the same?" And my sponsor has very masculine energy, and wife has very like feminine energy, so it just like it lined up perfectly. And so yeah, it's crazy. I actually have this tattoo because my first sponsor was a tattoo artist. So after my dad passed away, and in the house when I would go outside, there was this black butterfly that was always roaming around, and I didn't really think anything of it. I was just like black butterfly that's kind of weird. It's always there. I didn't really think anything of it, but after the fact, I was like, maybe that was my dad. And then when I found out that my sponsor had the same birthday as my dad, I got the butterfly tattooed by her, and it has 414, like the birth date underneath. And so that was like my little um like celebration of this whole synchronicity that I experienced later on and realized after the fact.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. This is like a dramatic amount of them. I think
It really
Yeah.
is. It
So
really
cool.
is. Yes, I've like literally, as you've been talking, I get like I've been getting goosebumps this whole time. And ever since Kathryn, our first episode, and you're like, that's spirit, that is, spirit speaking to you. And I just look at it so much I, differently now whenever I get goosies. It happens
Yeah.
all the time, but I'm just like, yes, this is like there's something's connecting right now, and it's just amazing to me the amount of synchronicities that have been kind of guiding your life, Nazi, and it's amazing. I mean, now here you are, and like reflecting back, I mean, do you feel like are you a spiritual person now? Like, would you define yourself as a spiritual person now? Or are you still kind of like, I can recognize that these are synchronicities and I'm living my life. Like, has it influenced you to be a more spiritual person?
Not I don't know, not in the sense that I go searching for it. I definitely
Yeah.
believe and, like, I love that these experiences have happened, and I do, like, I am very, like, spiritual, but I'm not, like, actively I don't know if I'll ever be the type of person that's, like, actively seeking, just because I like the energy of just receiving them as, like, a nice surprise instead of being in
Yeah.
pursuit of something, and I think that's the way that these synchronicities have showed up in my life by just like mere coincidence and, crazy revelations like happening all at once. And like after I've gone through the process of like processing something. And so, yeah, it's really nice to have these like affirmations. But again, going back to the OCD thing, if I was like constantly looking for synchronicities everywhere, it would be a problem. I would drive myself crazy because I'd just be constantly looking for validation
Right.
where I don't need it necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's maybe a more personal question, and one that Kathryn, you have direct experience understanding. Um, those who have passed on the other side, and your work in mediumship. I think there's this other idea, that this is, whether it be nudges from spirit or nudges from spirit guides, but you have some very close people to you on the other side. So I'm curious if that's ever crossed your mind that like maybe this is your dad, or like nudging you in a certain direction.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a medium once tell me because I don't really dabble with that with mediums or astrology readers or anything that often, but the one time I saw a medium to connect with my dad, uh, the medium said that my dad was there orchestrating the whole meeting. I was like, "Maybe, maybe," but she was very adamant that my dad was there, and my dad wanted it to be made known that he was there making it happen, and I was just like, "Oh, thanks, dad." So, yeah, that was actually gonna
Yeah.
something I was gonna ask too is, like, what is it what are these forces at play during synchronicities? Is it my own subconscious? Is it universe? Is it spirit guides? Like, is it all those things? Like, what is it?
It's a good question. What do you think, Kathryn?
Yeah. I was like, it sounds like this one's a question for me. Um,
Yeah, it was.
I think we get nudges from spirit, from loved ones in spirit. We also get nudges from spirit guides. And then I believe a lot of it is frequency. So I think everything is frequency. And so it's like getting into coherence with what's closer in alignment with us. So when we're more aligned, the frequencies will be more like harmonious, maybe, or similar. And so it brings more things to us. And we feel like we're meeting people in places where we shouldn't be meeting them, but they're neighbors, or like in another state like you were, and you met someone who you it would have been much easier to meet him in New York, but instead you met him somewhere else. But that also makes you recognize that it's an important moment when it happens out of the norm. So I think I think everything's frequency, but then I also think that spirit and the forces around us in the alternate dimensions do work to support us. And I think it happens a lot with people in recovery as well. I think this is actually an important thing for anyone in recovery listening to this to know about, is that when you're in recovery, you are so incredibly supported because they want you to be living your life fully again and to have that autonomy and to have that healing. And so you tend to have a lot more energetic support around you in that healing phase. Also with grief, and you may not always feel it, but those are times when it's like all hands on deck trying to help.
Catherine, have you done like readings with people in recovery? I imagine. Like, are they different? Do different things happen? Or am I just trying to find a distinction where there is not one?
No, I don't think it's any different when people come for readings, their loved ones are around, but I think from um just knowing that we're in those deep periods of despair, we're not ever alone.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think when you said the frequency, I hadn't really thought about it in that sense. And I guess that's something I can just get on board with. In previous episodes where we've talked about concepts like attaining a higher self, this is essentially being in a certain frequency and living in that frequency as much as possible. And I want to make it clear that it's not always possible to live in a high frequency. There's obviously a lot of work that needs to be done to be there in authenticity as often as possible. But I, like you, Catherine, really do believe in that, in frequency and in
Mhm,
energy.
mhm,
I've said before, if there's anything that I believe in, it's energy. That is a real thing. Like it's science,
mhm,
and there are so many things happening right here, in front of us that we cannot see, but it is operating on a different frequency. So when we're able to modulate our frequency and manage it and heal it, and obtain reaching frequencies at a higher level, we're maybe more capable of seeing some of these things. And some of these things might be synchronicities. So I had never thought about it in that way. And reiterating that, I guess it's a way that is like, this makes sense to me. And my logical brain is like, yes, this is fact. So yeah, thank you for framing it that way. It just resonates.
Do you have anything else for Catherine, Nazi?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Kathryn. This has been like such a delight getting to share
You're
these
welcome. This is
stories
so
with you.
fun. Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of my questions got answered like along the way as we were talking. But I think something I was curious about, and it would be fun to like to get a sense from you, like, do synchronicities ever come up as warnings, or are they always positive?
Uh, I don't know that we would recognize them as synchronicities, but I do think we get warnings. And I'll give you an example of something that I believe is a warning from myself. This was years and years and years ago, and I was rushing, and I had a neighbor across the street who was always mad at me because I forgot to put my trash back to the house after trash day. And I was a single
Oh my
mom, and
gosh, who
I know.
cares?
I know. And, I was a single mom raising two, they were toddlers at that point, and he'd be upset that my grass would be longer, all these other things. And I'm like, how do you mow the grass when you have two toddlers? Overwhelmed, really
Yeah.
stressed all the time, rushing to get to school. And I had my daughter in the back of my van in a car seat and had reversed out of the garage, closed the garage door, and then noticed the trash can and was like, oh no, the trash can. And instead of putting the car in park, I put it in drive, exited the car, and got out. And just in that speed of idle, right, the car went forward and hit my garage door. And I was like, could have been so much worse, right? My daughter was fine. The garage door was not fine, but everything, what mattered was fine.
Right.
And it was horrible. It was going to be $1,000. Like, there were all these I could sit there and go, this is the worst day, right? I'm going to have to fix my car. Now we're really late for work. We're really late for daycare. I'm going to have to fix the garage. And instead I made the decision, no, this is such a great thing that happened to me, because I needed to slow down. I needed to pay more attention. I needed to be more present. I needed to be less distracted. I needed to be less rushed. And if I didn't hit the garage door, I might have hit another car. I might have hit something else. So I do think we get warnings, but we don't always, and that's not even spiritual. Like, maybe that is spiritual, but I had that, I think that's just, we miss when the warnings are trying to help us and we think it's a bad day, but really it could have been way worse. And so it's our
Yeah.
warning to slow down.
Reminds me of like one of my favorite Cormac McCarthy quotes, like, you don't know what worse luck your bad luck saved you from.
Right.
Yes. Oh, that's such a perfect quote right now, too. Exactly. You know?
Yeah, that's the framing. If I'm ever running late or if things just aren't going as planned, it's like the reframe of I'm just going to tell myself there's a reason why this isn't
Yes.
going the way that I had intended, and it's better this way, actually.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. It just helps, keeps good perspective too, navigating this complex, difficult life that we've all signed up for.
Yes. Whether spiritual or not, I think we can all take a little bit of something positive from the idea of synchronicities. And this conversation was great. Nazy, thank you for sharing your story with us. I'm very excited for you in this wedding, and Jonathan just sounds like an amazing human.
Thank
Send
you.
us pictures. I can't wait to see photos.
I will.
And Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us. You know that we love you. We're just always amazed by everything that you have to offer.
All right. Thank you both.
Awesome. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
Bye.
Bye.